happens when the worst watch brand on social media decides to make a complex mechanical watch. Unsurprisingly, you get one of the worst value watches you can buy. Wait, what was that? I've already made that video. Yeah, I forgot about that one. Yeah, a year or two back, Movement, or MVMT, one of the most hated watch brands, decided to release the Arc, a minimalist automatic watch with an even bigger profit margin than their quartz pieces. Unfortunately for them, I found an incredibly similar looking piece on AliExpress for a fraction of the price and with a sapphire crystal, rendering the poor Arc basically obsolete. Admittedly, it was better than the previous junk being peddled by that company, but it wasn't nearly worth the steep asking price. Despite this watch being choke-slammed online, it seems it hasn't put off their competitors. In fact, it seems some have been inspired. Daniel Wellington, often labelled as the worst watch brand ever due to their grocery store levels of quality, has now jumped in with their own minimalist automatic watch, which they're promoting as their most advanced timepiece to date. Ooh, fancy! Don't worry, despite the hype, this one isn't a $300 watch like the Arc. It's closing in on $500. In what world could this possibly justify a $459 retail price? Well, this one, it seems. Yeah, to the dismay of my wife, I've gone and done the unthinkable. I actually went and bought one. As the #1 critic of these fashion brands over the years, I think it's my responsibility to acknowledge when they're improving their products. If this new automatic is actually better, it's only fair it gets pointed out, right? But the question is, have they made any improvements? Is it actually a decent watch? It's linked in the video description if you want to take a look for yourself, along with a link to our sponsor, Watch Crunch. Built by fellow watch nerds who grew tired of the negativity and blingy flex culture on other platforms. You know which ones I'm talking about. Watch Crunch was made to promote better, friendlier watch discussions from the ground up. On watchcrunch.com, you'll find a huge variety of watch content, including reviews, articles, pictures, videos, Q&As, and more, with their team adding additional content and features all the time. I reckon this sort of product has been needed for a while. Loads of existing forums use clunky, outdated interfaces that are a train wreck on mobile devices. Watch Crunch, on the other hand, is extremely easy to use, no matter what screen size you're viewing on, and your contributions are even rewarded with beautiful badges that you can display in your profile. Customize your feed by following particular brands and tags, make new horological finds with the ingenious Discover tab, and engage with like-minded watch lovers from across the globe in the comment sections. It's free to use, and you'll be set up in a matter of seconds. Sign up now using the link in the description. I tell you what, I made quite a stir on Watch Crunch posting this photo. Either way, let's take a closer look at it together. The iconic Link Automatic, as they've named it, arrived in a box that's near identical to the cheaper DW watches I've previously looked at. While run-of-the-mill and fairly generic, it's actually alright. At this price, other brands like Hamilton provide a much more luxurious experience, but at the end of the day, packaging is pretty low on the importance scale. The iconic Link looks just like the lower-end quartz watches from Square On, though there are some notable differences in shape as you rotate it. Unfortunately, the one thing going for the previous DW models, the super thin case, is absent this time. Obviously, the automatic movement within is bigger than a battery-powered quartz module. Now, this iconic Link is almost double the thickness of the older models at 11.7mm, excluding the Cyclops, leading to a far chunkier look and feel. For the rest of the stats, it's got a 40mm diameter and a 48mm lug to lug. The lugs curve away quite steeply this time, making it more viable for smaller wrists than their frisbee-like quartz watches, which only suited giant arms, at least if you wanted it to look in proportion. From above, I think this watch looks better than those too, due to the slightly thicker bezel and smaller dial, which give less of that pancake-like effect. The rest of the case, however, is much uglier than the Movement Arc, or most others at this price for that matter. It feels like a generic afterthought, basically. The whole thing has the same polishing all over it, and it just doesn't stand out in any way from far cheaper watches. The case isn't particularly well cut, and you don't even get much of that kind of mirror finish, you know, when you can tell that polishing is done to a super high standard. It's just not here. In some ways, it reminds me of the underwhelming case found on the Seiko Presage I reviewed, but that piece had a beautiful dial to bail it out. Unfortunately, this one doesn't. Yeah, the dial and design here are just bland. You could say it's minimalist, but I'm not so sure. The Movement Arc, while still pretty generic, did have some interesting elements, such as a skeletonized handset, a circular date cutout, and grey pips at the circumference, providing a semblance of personality. This DW, on the other hand, looks like a submission for a 30-second design contest. Perhaps they hired a child or something because they've got the D on backwards. It's not hideous, admittedly, but Nothing here shouts affordable luxury to me. You can buy cheap Seiko 5s that offer the same aesthetic, arguably with better looking final touches, for a fraction of the cost of this one. Heck, the first Seiko I ever reviewed on this channel way back when, that one looked pretty similar to this, but had a much nicer sunburst effect for 1/5 of the price. DW couldn't even be bothered to use an enlarged or unique marker at 12 to discern it from the others. They're all just the same, basic and evidently cheap rectangles. The background has no texture, no enamel finish or sunburst or anything. I personally don't think this design was made with, tastefulness in mind, but rather with cost as the main priority. They certainly didn't have usability in mind either. While the microscopic crowns were forgivable on the quartz models, given that you'd rarely ever be touching them, the equally small wheel on this automatic is a confusing choice. Now I get it, they want it to look stylish or look a certain way, but as far as challenging crowns go, this is second only to completely smooth ones. Good luck gripping this when trying to wind your watch. But what exactly will he be winding? On their website, it's just listed as a Japanese automatic movement. If it's not Swiss at this price, surely it's got to be something fairly decent, right? Right? Well, inside this pricey watch is a Miyota automatic. No, not the reputable 9000 series, no, the far cheaper, aging and problem-ridden 8215. The same movement inhabiting many watches that sell for an absolute fraction of the price of this one. While reliable in terms of timekeeping, this movement has nonetheless garnered a negative reputation in the community due to the painfully loud rotor noise and the high frequency of stuttering issues resulting from an inherent flaw in the movement's design. Unlike the 9000 series, it doesn't have a particularly high beat rate even when the unit is functioning properly, so the second-hand motion is a lot less pleasing to look at. For brands wanting to forego the bottom of the barrel Chinese Tongji movement so they can market their watch as having Japanese parts so they can increase their asking price, this is the minimal viable product. What's worse is that Daniel Wellington couldn't even be asked to decorate this in any way, shape or form. They were too lazy to even spend the extra on a basic custom rotor or even a lasered rotor of some sort. The bare bones movement here is identical to that in watches that retail for a fraction of this one, such as the Cadison Automatic, which is the one I compared to Movement a year or two back. When alongside many European micro brands who are often criticised for not competing with these big brands or Chinese specials, even watch newbies could spot the disparity in presentation. I mean, which movement do you prefer the look of? To be clear, while this budget movement has some obvious shortcomings, these can be accepted for a watch costing $100, maybe even $200 perhaps, but at this price point, it's just a complete rip-off. There are a plethora of better options that should have been used instead to ensure users didn't have to deal with the aforementioned issues, or that would have justified the inclusion of the exhibition rear to begin with. To me, it seems like the whole point of the see-through window has been defeated. Either that, or it's just there to show you how hosed you got when purchasing the iconic automatic. Even Movement used the decorated 821A version inside their automatic, and that was at a lower price point. Fortunately, there are some aspects of this watch that are less scandalous. The first is the bracelet. Surprisingly, it's pretty good. It integrates fairly well with the case, is easily removable thanks to the drilled lugs, and is constructed of solid steel links throughout. This bracelet uses the butterfly-style deployment system, leaving a slicker look with no traditional clasp. Typically, I don't like these as they don't permit any adjustments, which usually leads to an imperfect fit. Adjustments as in micro adjustments at least, obviously you can still take out links. Fortunately, DW included 2 smaller links, allowing for more precise tinkering. This means I found a pretty comfortable fit with the iconic, which I wasn't expecting beforehand. Of course, is this level of quality expected for any watch over $200 or $300? Yes it is. We can't be piling praise on Daniel Wellington for doing their job with this component. Similar can be said of the sapphire crystal. While this provides top tier scratch protection, and I'm pleased they haven't used a gimmicky substitute like other brands, go check out our scratch test video if you haven't seen it already, for some reason I'm still not feeling the inclusion of the Cyclops here. On a dive watch, sure. On a field watch, it might be understandable, but on a super minimalist dress watch like this, to me it just sticks out like a sore thumb. And frustratingly, it's not even aligned properly. At least to my eyes, it's tilted clockwise slightly and is a bit too high, leaving the date window sitting toward the bottom of the Cyclops when looked at from square on. A lot of crystals come with these pre-fitted when ordered, so perhaps it's more the supplier's fault than Daniel Wellington's. Still, this could easily have been avoided had they not bothered with the Cyclops to begin with, though those with failing eyesight may appreciate the inclusion nonetheless. At least they didn't go full scam mode with a mineral crystal or something. The watch also has 100 meters of water resistance, which is nice to have, but not really a necessity for something that feels like a dress watch. For those wondering, despite the Japanese movement and the European branding, this watch is actually made in China. The Daniel Wellington Iconic Link Automatic is an alright watch that should cost $150 or $200, but doesn't. It's their best watch by far, but even with discount codes, it's insultingly poor value for money. While the Movement Arc was overpriced, it wasn't nearly this bad. I can't think of any aspect of this watch that justifies the price it's selling for at the moment. By heading to eBay's completed listings section, you can see how terrible the resale value of the quartz watches is compared to their RRPs. I wonder if this automatic will perform even worse by percentage. I'm covering some great alternatives to this watch and these minimalist fashion watches in a video coming up soon. Make sure you watch it when it's ready and prevent some buyer's remorse.